We talked off the top, Ty, about this Arkansas defense building towards something. And of course, Sam Pittman taking over a bit of a mess on both sides of the ball and making something out of it remarkably. If he hasn't been, he could have been coach of the year the last 2 seasons across the country. But when I look back on that 3-7 season, which on the surface 3-7 doesn't sound impressive, but considering where they were and the nature of the 3-7 and how competitive it was, I think about them playing a defensive style that they had to play, because we talked about not quite being an SEC caliber defense from a size standpoint, defensive depth and so forth. They were opportunistic, if nothing else, and a lot of that had to do with the secondary play and the classic game against Matt Corral, picking him off 6 times comes to mind as well. So set us up on the defensive side in the secondary.
Yeah, so again, more transfers. A possibility here of a couple of guys that might even come in and start. In former LSU Tiger Dwight McGlothern, who, by the way, is already off to a pretty strong spring camp, and someone who's mouthy. And I'm going to be honest with you, Mark. I have no problem with that. I like mouthy. That's kind of part of the role that we don't talk enough about with corners when they're matched up against these receivers. It's the same way. One of the best athletes I ever watched play the game. Of course, I'm a Celtics fan. I'm representing. But one thing that one of my favorite Celtics players ever did, Kevin Garnett, he'd get in your ear. He'd start trash talking, and he gets inside your head, and it messes with you. I think that's what makes Jalen Ramsey such a great corner. One of the many things that makes Jalen Ramsey so great. Gets in those wideouts' heads. He gets them so angry where it throws them off their game a little bit. I think that might be what Dwight McGlothern might be a little bit. Apparently, he was pretty mouthy in their workouts on Sunday, and he made a play on I don't know who he was covering, but apparently he was jawing that receiver's, letting him like, hey man, you know what? Nothing's happening here because I'm covering you. I love that. I like those guys that have a little chip on their shoulder. We're Arkansas. We should always have a chip on our shoulder, Mark. The whole world looks down on us. I mean, that's kind of the way we feel about it. If you don't believe me, go follow Bryce Mitchell on Twitter, UFC fighter. I'm not into UFC. Go follow him. That is your typical, like, Arkansan with a chip on their shoulder kind of guy, and he represents the state so well. So I love hearing that Dwight McGlothern doing a little bit of, mouthing off a little bit. But you have him. You have Latavius Brinney. These are 2 guys, too, pretty good size. These aren't little tiny corners or DBs. These are guys with a little bit of size beneath them. Latavius Brinney, transfer out of Georgia. And then you have Jalen Catalon, who's your All-American. This is going to be the guy between him and Bumper Pool. These 2 guys are going to be the leaders of the defense. I really like Jalen Catalon. Actually, he's done a couple of Instagram lives, and I don't mind like sitting in and kind of listening to him talk a little bit. I mean, you could tell he's got a real high just football IQ. And I love listening to him kind of talk a little bit about it, which every once in a while you'll get a little bit out of him on his Instagram lives. He knows what he's doing, and he's definitely got the ability to be a leader. And I think that's something they're going to ask him to do, Jalen Catalon, be a little bit more of a leader this year. You're going to have Miles Slusher, who I like his versatility. This is someone who can line up at any spot in the secondary, anywhere. He can line up as a cover corner guy. He could be he could defend the boundary. He can defend the slot. He could be your nickel. He could be your free safety. He's athletic enough that he could do it all. And I don't know what they're going to do with him. Last year, Sam Pittman admitted that, he did this with Bishop, one of the starting corners. He admitted that, one of our biggest issues is we didn't plant him at one corner spot and leave him there to develop. Once we did that, his play, he was better. He got better over time once we left him alone at a position. With Slusher, they're kind of doing the same thing where they're moving him around because of his versatility. But he could end up being your nickel there. We'll see. There's a couple of different players there who could end up lining up there at the nickel spot. I'm trying to remember the Penn State kid's name, the kid that transferred out of Penn State, Trent Gordon. Trent Gordon was someone who kind of stood out to me a couple times last year, actually, but he dealt with some injury issues. He could line up at the nickel spot. The corner positions, again, talking about Dwight McGlothern and Latavius Brinney. You're going to have Hudson Clark probably still in the mix. You're going to have Ladarius Bishop there, who Bishop's probably one of the 3 fastest guys on this roster, last I heard. Malik Chavis will be in the mix with the safeties. Again, this is another area because of these transfers you feel pretty good about. And, that's, what is that? 5 transfers, Landon Jackson at LSU on the defensive line, Jordan Dominic out of Georgia Tech, Drew Sanders out of Alabama, who will definitely be either a starter or a guy that probably plays Henry's role from a year ago. Dwight McGlothern and Latavius Brinney, all these transfers, Mark, right now, just to give Arkansas fans or anybody else who hasn't really had a chance to kind of keep up with it all, because it's off-season football, so fast-paced now. There's so much going on with the portal and all this NIL stuff. But last year, all the transfers that they had, if you recall, they had 3 transfers on the defensive line. All 3 of them came in on during spring camp. They were listed at the 3 spot on the depth chart. Every one of these guys I just mentioned, outside of Jordan Dominic, who's ineligible to participate during spring camp, all of them right now are at the 2 spot. So these guys are already a step ahead of the guys compared to a year ago. Now, I could be wrong. There might be one of those players that may have come in and been a 2 guy. And I think, if I remember right, one of them may not have been able to participate during spring camp. I can't really recall. Last year seems like 5 years ago, but I think this group is already off to a great start. Spring camp apparently has been much more fluid this year, a lot better. Talking to people who've actually had the opportunity to go and be a part of it, it seems a lot more fluid, and they're off to a great start, which no one's going to say they're off to a bad start. I get, but compared to previous years, I'm hearing that this year is off to a really good start for Sam Pittman's to begin his 3rd season as the head hog.